Hello, primary 6 students, how are you? This is your time to study science. As now, we will study lesson 4 from concept 1, unit 3. This is me, Shaimaa Hamdy, and you are watching the Big Sister channel. So don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and press the bell button to get all the new lessons. Okay? As now we have a nice activity, we will do an experiment in this activity. Activity 9, convection, currents, and water cycle. As you know, convection is a type of heat transfer, as we studied. So, convection is a type of heat transfer where hot molecules which have less density rise upward, yes, and cold molecules which have more density, which are heavier, fall down. This is a convection, okay? And convection and gravity affect the movement of water through the water cycle as we studied last lesson, okay? Okay, now we will do an experiment to show how the convection and gravity force affect the water cycle. Okay, here is the tools that we need for this experiment. We want cold and hot water and the thin plastic sheets, okay, and food coloring. Any food coloring here, we will use red and blue, okay? So now I will count down, okay, and you will watch this experiment. And I want from you to observe the results, and we will discuss the results after watching the experiment, okay? So let's start. As you see here, the cold water, we color it by the blue color and the hot water by the red color. When we put the jar of the hot water above the cold water, what happens? There is no change. But if we put the cold water above the jar that has the hot water, so what happens? Yes, we see that the red and blue water are mixed, producing purple color. Yes? So let us now discuss what happens, okay? As in case 1, we observed that the red and blue water are mixed, producing purple color. But in case 2, the blue and red water don't mix. Remember that the blue color is the cold water and the red water is the hot water, okay? So, the explanation here, as in case 1, where the hot water molecules, which is lighter, has less density, rises upward, while cold water molecules, which have more density, fall down. So, the red and blue water are mixed, producing this purple color, okay? But in case 2, there is not mixing. Why? Because where the cold water molecules, which have more density, can't rise up, okay? And also the hot water molecules, which have the less density, can't fall down. So in this case, the red water and blue water don't mix, okay? And remember that the gravity has an important role here, as it's responsible for pulling the cold water molecules which have more density toward just the ground or the earth surface. So this is the rule of the gravity force. So from this experiment, what can we conclude from this experiment? Yes, the conclusion here that convection, as the hot water molecules rises up and the cold molecules replace it because it have more density. So this is convection currents. And we conclude also that the gravity force, both of them affect the movement of water through the water cycle. So again, the convection currents and gravity force affect the movement of water through the water cycle. Okay? For now, we will go to activity 10, which talk about the wind. Okay? So we have now activity 10, Earth's wind. Okay? Today, we will know information about wind. How does the wind form? How does the wind help the water cycle? What are the factors that affect the wind direction? Okay? These the information that we will study now. Okay? But first, I want you to listen to this weather forecast and focus in what she saying, okay? Because we will discuss it, okay, after watching. So, here.
عدم الاستقرار التي شهدتها البلاد خلال اليومين الماضيين. وقالت الأرصاد إن حالة الاستقرار بالأحوال الجوية تأتي بعد هدوء كامل في سرعات الرياح وانخفاض في ارتفاعات الأمواج على مسطح البحر الأحمر وتكون للشبورة المائية صباحا على الطرق الزراعية والقريبة من المسطحات المائية.
So, welcome back, primary 6 students. So, from what we heard, we understood what? Yes, wind is a main factor in determining weather and climate. Yes, so wind is a main factor in determining weather and climate. Daily weather conditions depend on wind. When it carries heat, moisture, rain, snow, dust, and sand, okay? All of these. And we understood that the change in wind causes a change in weather, as we heard from this weather forecast. Yes? As when the wind changes, so the weather changes also, okay? Okay, as you see here, this is an example for the wind when it carries sand or dust, yes? Also here, wind carries rain, as you see, okay? So, wind blow in constant direction, okay? Over long periods of time. As you see here in this drawing, this is the direction of the wind. Wind blow in these directions over long period of time, okay? Wind blow in constant direction. And this, we call it global wind system. This, the system of the wind in the world, okay? So, global wind system as wind blow in constant direction. It doesn't change its direction easily, okay? Over long periods of time, this is the direction of the wind. And we call this global wind system, okay? The unequal heating of Earth between the poles and the equator generates wind. As we know there is unequal heating on Earth's surface, as the amount of sun rays that reach to the Earth's surface is different from the equator area to the areas above and below the equator, north and south the equator, and it is different from the areas that far away from the equator, okay, as we studied last lesson. Yes, and this leads to what? Yes, convection currents happens and movement of wind as the hot air rises upward and the cold will replace it, okay? So this is coding the movement of wind, okay? Okay. Now we knew that the wind blows in constant direction over long periods of time, and this is, we call it global wind system. And also we know that the unequal heating of Earth between the poles and the equator generates wind, okay? As we mentioned, that wind has an important role in the water cycle. So here we will discuss this point, as wind helps in transporting water through the water cycle. Wind helps in transporting water through the water cycle. Transporting as carries water through the water cycle by carrying water vapor and by forming ocean currents. Yes, as wind carries water vapor, also wind forming ocean currents. And we discussed this point, if you remember it, in lesson 1, I think, okay? As the sunlight generates the wind movement, and we now know how the sunlight generates the wind movement, as the unequal heating causes the generating of wind, yes? And then the wind movement causes what? The ocean currents, okay? So, wind helps in transporting water through the water cycle by carrying water vapor and forming ocean currents. This is about how the wind helps in transporting water in the water or through the water cycle, okay? By carrying water vapor and forming ocean currents. Now, we want to know what are the factors that affect the wind direction, that the wind is moving in constant direction, that we call it global wind system, yes? So what is the factors that affect the wind direction? First, the amount of solar radiation that reach the Earth. The amount of solar radiation that reach the Earth. And another factor, which is the rotation of Earth. So this is the two factors that affect the wind direction. The amount of solar radiation that reaches the Earth and the rotation of Earth, okay, around itself, yes. Okay, now it's time to know how does wind form, okay? How does the wind form? As wind forms when the warm air rises up by the effect of the sun radiation, and it replaces by cooler air that flows from nearby areas, okay? So here, the warm air rises up by the effect of the sun radiation, and it replaced by cooler air that flows from areas that are near from this place, okay? Okay, this is the first step, okay? Then, so focus here in this point, as if the warm air carries enough amount of water vapor, as we said that the wind carries water vapor. Yes? So, if the warm air carries enough amount of water vapor during its rising, so the water vapor condenses and the air loses, okay, it in a form of rain. So the water will condenses and come back to the earth as a form of rain. So the air lose this water, okay? At the same time, cooler air replaces the rising warm air. As you see here in this drawing, warm air rises up and it carries enough amount of water vapor. So here the warm air carries water vapor. This water vapor will condenses, okay, and forms cloud, and it turns back to the earth as in a form of rain. Yes, and at the same time, when the warm air rises up, cooler air replacing it, okay? Okay, then what happens? When the warm air flows away from its place, go far away from its place to another one, it cools and descends. Descends means fall down, okay? Okay, so here the warm air flows away from its place to another one, it cools and descends or fall down, okay? By the time it reaches to the Earth's surface again, and it becomes dry. Becomes dry because it has no water vapor, okay? So the dry air forms a group of dry deserts around the Earth, and this is why there are large areas of deserts, yes, on the Earth, yes, as we mentioned that in last lesson. Okay, so here dry air forms group of dry deserts around the Earth. Okay, so here again, when this air, that cool air that descends, okay, that falls down, reaches the Earth surface again, and it becomes dry. So this dry air forms a group of dry areas which it is deserts around the Earth, okay? Then it flows back again to the same place, okay? It comes back to the same place, okay? And so on. Here it may be warm and rises up again, and so on. So what would happen if there is no wind on Earth? So think with me. Here the unequal heating causes the air, that is warm air, rises up and it flows to another areas and it cools down and descends and it becomes dry and form deserts and it flows back to its place. So without wind, the regions around the equator will be extremely hot and the poles become completely freeze. Okay, and also the ecosystems, some ecosystems will change completely, yes, as the regions will be around the equator very, very hot. So some living organisms can't survive in these ecosystems, yes, and the opposite in the poles also, some living organisms can't live in these completely freezing ecosystems. So if there is no wind, the regions around the equator will be extremely hot and the poles become completely freeze and some ecosystems will change completely and some ecosystems will disappear completely. Okay, so if there is no wind, the regions around the equator will be extremely hot and the poles become completely freeze, and this will make some ecosystem will change completely or disappear completely. With this point, we finish this lesson. So thank you for watching. See you next video, inshallah, and goodbye.